Good evening and welcome to the City of Burbank Police Commission meeting on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. I'd like to call this meeting to order and take a roll call, please.
Commissioner Chapman is absent. Commissioner Cohen?
Here.
Commissioner Elman?
Here.
Chair Kobaisi?
Here.
And Commissioner Vest?
Here.
Thank you. Would everyone in the chamber please rise and we'll do the flag salute. Place your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the public comment period will be upcoming in a few minutes. To speak during that period, please call 818-238-3335. City staff will answer the phones and announce speakers in real time to the chair when the public comment period begins. Again, that number is 818-238-3335. Okay, so we'll begin with commission announcements and reporting out by commission subcommittees. Are there any commissioners that have any announcements, reports to make? I see none. Go to oral communications. This is the public comments period. Do we have any callers?
Our next caller is Gene, and you are live with the Police Commission.
Hello. Good evening. A few things. Of course, we had that Chauvin verdict, guilty on all three counts. And, that was very unusual because those were massive national headlines. The jury walked in pretty much having their minds made up. And this is a rarity. Had it not been for Darnell Frazier taking that video of it, and the creating national headlines, I don't think we would have got that verdict. If it would have just happened and all we saw was the video, they would have explained that away. But anyhow, what this brings me to is that we were offered the opportunity last year in a joint session between the City Council and the Police Commission, to do some real reforms. And we had an independent agency come in and evaluate. That's their job. And they go on best practices. And their best practice was when an incident happens, an officer writes it up first, then sees the video. This is where reform starts, and guess who shot that down? Our police union. That's where reform starts, putting some shackles on the police union. And we have a police commission, we have a city council, and we have people who vote. And my goodness, we have to take back our police department and not turn it over to the union. My goodness, it's a no-brainer. And we got some new members on the commission. I'm looking forward to hopefully some reforms. I mean, real reforms that keeps these people. And there's a lot of bills in Sacramento, and one is to take away the license of a peace officer if they're involved in any kind of misconduct. And I think that's a good one, and it should pass, because we don't need people who engage in misconduct on our police force, and their license to be a police officer should be taken away. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for calling. Our next caller.
Our next caller is Tamala. You're on live with the Police Commission.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Can you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners and Chief Lachot. My name is Tamala Takahashi, 22-year resident of Burbank. Before I make my comment tonight about the agenda item, I'd like to thank the Police Chief Lachot, as well as the other officers and commissioners who attended last night's BHRC, Burbank Human Relations Council, presentation of redefining community policing. BHRC is looking forward to more community conversations like this one and more opportunities for us to listen to one another and work towards the common goal of collaborative public safety for all. If you have any follow-up questions or would like a link to the video of the presentation last night at BHRC, feel free to contact thebhrc@gmail.com. So I do have one comment tonight about agenda item G2, the MET team. I'd like to share with you a program that I think is an excellent model to consider among the other models that will be presented in tonight's PowerPoint. I'd like to share with you the information about the STAR program in Denver. This program is an example of how we can take the MET team to the next level. The Support Team Assisted Response Program, or STAR, has been in place in Denver since June 2020. The STAR van has a mental health clinician and a paramedic who respond to low-level incidents like trespassing and mental health episodes. In its first 6 months, STAR has responded to nearly 1,000 incidents. None have required police or led to arrest or jail time. And that ends up being around 6 incidents a day. STAR is still in its first-year pilot program, so it does not yet respond to every nonviolent incident. It responds to about 3% of calls. And currently it runs from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. STAR represents a more empathetic approach to responding to community incidents that keeps people out of an often cyclical criminal justice system by connecting people with services like shelter, food, counseling, and medication. The program also deliberately cuts down on encounters between uniformed officers and civilians. The Denver Chief of Police, Paul Pazin, is a supporter of the program and says in several articles that his department is happy with the results of working together with STAR. In fact, about 35% of the current calls to the STAR team are from police officers, recognizing that they were called out to incidents that could be better served by civilian STAR team instead. According to Chief Pazin, transferring low-level calls to civilian teams solves 2 problems at once, getting harmless residents to the help they need while letting police focus on other things. He quotes, "I want the police department to focus on police issues. We have more than enough work with regards to violent crime, property crime, and traffic safety, and if something like STAR or any other support system can lighten the load on mental health calls for service, substance abuse calls for service, and low-level issues, that frees up law enforcement to address crime issues." Chief Pazin's goal is to expand the program so that every neighborhood can have its services at all hours instead of just weekdays during the normal business hours. Funding the expected $3 million program
I'm
for a
sorry
large...
that your time is up,
Oh,
Tamala.
thank
Thank you,
you.
though. Any other callers?
There are no other callers at this time. You may continue with the proceedings.
Thank you. The next item of business here is the commission response to public comments. Are there any responses to the public comments by any of the commissioners? Anybody? If I can't see you, I know we're having some video issues. Just go ahead and interrupt. Okay, hearing and seeing none, we'll move to the next item, approval of the minutes from March 17, 2021's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve or any changes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a move in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposing? Anybody opposing? We'll just do it by consensus since I can't see you. If you have any problems, speak up. It looks like nobody is, so it gets approved. Okay. Next item of business, presentation and discussion on the department's hiring process. This is a PowerPoint by Sergeant Aaron Kendrick. Welcome, and thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sergeant Kendrick, and I'm in charge of the personnel and training detail in the Cops Bureau. And I'm just going to give a small PowerPoint presentation to give you a snapshot of what the hiring process looks like for us, what the candidates have to go through, what the detectives go through. And then if you have any questions at the end, I'd be happy to answer any of them. So if we can go start with the PowerPoint presentation. Let's see here. No. Okay, so the first part is just an overview of what the candidates are going to go through, and that's the application process. There's going to be a written exam, a physical agility test, there's an oral interview, a background orientation that we go through with the candidates. There's what's called a physical agility test, which we call the PT 500. There'll be a chief's interview, and then we will conduct a background, very intense background investigation on the candidate to see if they're fit for the Burbank Police Department. We'll put them what's called almost like a polygraph test. We call it the CVSA test. It's a voice stress analyzer test. And then if they pass all those, we're happy with them, we will give them a conditional job offer. We'll touch on some of those items, and then we will go through a medical exam and psychological test. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a slide real quick of the network and the company that we use. It's called a National Testing Network. It's pretty standard in law enforcement. Fire department uses it also. It gives us, as well as the applicant, an ease of applying with different agencies. And what they will do is they will go on the website, or they can go on the city website. They'll apply with us, and specific to the national testing site, they can apply. They'll take a written test, and then they will select what agencies they wish for the testing site to administer to the different cities. So with that, what will happen is if you click on our website, there's a process that they will go through. They will fill out a series of questions specific to us that we do a vetting process that goes to human resources. Once they take the written exam and they select our agency, human resources will collect all that data, and then they will be invited to the physical agility test. And that should be coming up here in a second. Me click it, okay? Oops, sorry. Let's go back one. Just real quick, I thought it was important to put on here, let's go back again. Okay, so we get information from NTN, which is the National Testing Network, that we can see the different ethnicities that are applying with us, the different genders that are applying with us, and what that looks like as far as the process, so we can see maybe how we can improve in that area. Okay, so the next one I'll click on just a second. Hang on one second. It's a video. I thought it was important to share with you guys. We're always trying to change things to do things better. And so what we did is we tried to put together a video for the applicants that gives them an idea of what the physical agility course is going to entail. That way, even before they get into the testing process, they can train for that. We've tried in the past. We tried in the past to invite them to come and practice up there at the testing facility, but we found that this is a better process, and it's easier for ease of mind for them to look on the website that we've put it on. And so, keep having problems here. I'm not clicking anything. It's still going backwards. So as soon as we come with this video, it's about a 3 to 4 minute video. It's probably easier so you can see it than me explain it.
This video contains instructions on how to complete the Burbank Police Department Physical Agility course. Successful completion of the Physical Agility course is a requirement in the hiring process for police recruit. The Agility course is held at the Burbank Police Department firing range, which is located at 2244 Wildwood Canyon Road in the city of Burbank. The course is made up of several consecutive segments which must be completed in 2 minutes or less. The Agility course is designed to simulate an urban foot pursuit an officer may be faced with in the performance of their duties. The course begins with a short uphill run towards a 6-foot cinder block wall. Candidates must climb over the wall to reach the next obstacle. The video shows the 3 most common techniques for climbing over the wall. The first technique is the muscle up. A second technique is the leg hook. The third technique is the duck walk. After clearing the wall, candidates will run through a short maze, making sure they do not touch any of the walls or windows. To help guide candidates through the maze, a red line has been painted on the ground. If a candidate touches a wall or window, the stage must be redone. After exiting the maze, candidates will proceed to the next obstacle, the balance beam. Candidates must cross the balance beam without touching the ground or using any support. After clearing the balance beam, candidates will enter a 2-story house and climb a flight of stairs, touching each step along the way before exiting the house and descending down another flight of stairs. Candidates will then jump across a water drainage ditch, run along the hillside before crossing back over the ditch towards the railroad ties. Candidates must cross the railroad ties by stepping over each one using only 1 foot. After clearing the railroad ties, candidates will duck under an approximate 3-foot bar towards the simulated body drag. This section of the course requires that the candidate drag a 165-pound dummy across a distance of 50 feet. One technique is to drag the dummy by a limb. A second technique is to lift and drag the dummy from under the armpits. After reaching the cones, candidates can drop the dummy and proceed to the 2-foot wall, where they must jump the wall without touching it. Candidates must then follow the cone pattern and sprint back downrange, circling around a delineator. After rounding the delineator, candidates will run back past the house towards the final segment. The final segment consists of a grip test. To successfully complete the grip test, candidates must show a strength of 70 pounds with both their right and left hand. The Burbank Police Department is here to help you succeed. We wish you the best of luck.
Okay, so I guess I've just been informed that I think for the people that are on Zoom, I don't think you heard the audio of the video. So all the video is it's to simulate a potential foot pursuit by the officers and in various aspects of the job that they have to entail. And so it gives us a glimpse to see how physically fit the applicant is. And you can see we gave various examples on how to do certain techniques on the most challenging aspects. And so it gives them an idea what it looks like ahead of time, and it gives them time to train for it. So the next slide, please. Okay, so if they've passed all that, what will happen is we will invite them to an interview, and that'll be at the police station. And what that entails is a panel of 3 people. It can be a variety of various positions. As you can see, it can be made up of a civilian, officer, and a supervisor. And there's typically anywhere from 8 to 10 questions that are asked of them. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to assess the candidate a little bit about them, what they know about the city, their knowledge, and then there's some situational questions to see kind of their decision making. There's some integrity questions, and then it's an overall assessment, the best that the panel can make up in about 30 minutes of how qualified this applicant will be. Next slide. So once that happens, Human Resources will provide us with a list. And once that list is created, a couple things will take place. What we'll do is we'll take a look at their application, take a look at how they answered the questions, and we'll invite them to what we call an orientation. At that point, we will invite them to a new program that we started a couple years ago. Once COVID hit, we went online and partnered up with a company called Guardian Alliance. And what they'll do is we'll create an account for the applicant, and it is all done web-based. So it was helping with the in-person interviews, and it was also giving it a little bit easier for the applicant based on their circumstances, especially if some of them are out of state. So what they'll do is they'll answer a series of questions that we call a personal history questionnaire, which can vary based on the position that we're applying for, and we'll talk about that. This one is specific that I'm talking about is for police recruit, but we can talk about the non-sworn as well. So the personal history questionnaire is about anywhere from 20 to 25 pages of questions, so it's kind of intense. It gives their history of where they've lived, their work status, their education. It'll go into, and we'll get into that in a second, it'll go into their job history, criminal activity if they've had any, and various things that we'll touch on here in a minute. They'll upload personal documents, they'll sign documents, and we give them about a 2-week window just so we can keep moving along in the process. Once we've done orientation and they've completed the 2 weeks, so this is, I just wanted to share this with you. This is what our program looks like when we upload to the system. You'll see we ask them to upload a picture of themselves, and what you'll see, if you can see it on the screen, it'll give you a small glimpse of how far they are in the process. We can watch to see they're either 10% through, 30% through, and then we can kind of monitor and gauge how far along they are in the process. And that's what it looks like from our end. It'll show when they've applied and then the completion, and so we'll know that they're done and they're ready for the next step in that process. Okay, so this is what we call the physical fitness assessment test, and what will happen is this is also what the exercises that they will go through in the academy. And so we like to see how prepared they are, and so we will invite them to what we call the PT 500. And you'll see the exercises that we require of them. They'll do pull-ups, they'll do sit-ups, they'll do what's called mountain climbers, push-ups. They'll run 1.5 miles, and then they'll do what's called a 220-yard dash. That gives us an assessment. They'll get a score at the end, and if they complete, we're asking for 350 is the average that we're asking for them to pass. And it's not to say if they don't pass, they'll get another opportunity to do that in a couple months. It gives them an opportunity to see where they're at and where they need to improve on. And so it gives them an idea, too, of what we're looking for. So the next phase for us is the chief's interview. And so what we'll do is we'll take all their documents and we'll create what we call an autobiography. And I'm sorry, I correct myself. We will take their documents and we will put them in the program. And then they're also required for us is to write a 2 to 3 page autobiography. And there gives us a little bit about themselves. And then what we'll do is we'll present that to the staff. They'll read over it. It gives them a little bit of an idea of who the applicant is. And then we'll set up an interview for them, and it gives them a chance to ask them a series of questions, kind of get to know them and see if they're a good fit and if they have any concerns, questions for them. If the administration is happy with the applicant, we'll continue moving forward with them, and that'll bring us to the next phase. If we get to that part. Okay, so this is where the background actually for us begins, and we've got 2 options. We will do the background ourselves, but if we're inundated with so many other applicants, we will also send it out to a third party that we use. That gives us the opportunity to get as many applicants through the process as possible without bombarding our detectives with all these backgrounds and then getting stuck with the process. It allows us typically a background if there's no issues with certain phases that go on or they're out of state. A background can take anywhere from a month to 2 months, and so it allows us to have that flexibility to do that. And so we'll sit down and we'll look at that between the detectives, and we'll decide if we want to do that background personally or we want to send it to a third party. And again, that's usually best case scenario takes us a month. Next one, Sherry. So this is what our background looks like. It gives you an idea. So if you can see on the left column, this is all the stuff that they're going to have to do. So you're going to see there's an advisement and waiver form that they're going to sign for us, which gives us the authority to look at their stuff, look at their packet, look at different agencies that they've applied to. You'll see the personal history questionnaire. We get to see all their questions that they answered. We will go through, we will fingerprint them. We'll check to make sure if they've got any firearms registered to them. We'll see their driving history. Like I said, previous law enforcement agencies that they've applied to are currently. We can see their financial status. We'll verify their education, their citizenship, if they've got any military history, marriage status, employment history, relatives and references, neighborhood checks, and then we'll do the medical and psychological clearance to see if they're fit for duty. And then you'll also see the polygraph and the voice analyzer test. And so you'll see how intense the background can be for the applicant. What we'll do is we'll comprise some questions we will give to our detective who performs the voice stress analyzer test, and he will look at the personal history questionnaire, and based on how they answered, he will form questions to verify some of the answers that they gave. And based on that, he will make his assessment and determine if there was any deception in the answers that they provided to us. Okay, so the last part, once we've given them a conditional job offer, the last part is their medical and psychological examination, which they'll go through a series of medical tests with physicians. And if they pass that, we send them to a psychological also, where we have a doctor who will who gives them a series of written tests, and then we'll interview them also and see if they're fit to do the job. And we will send them a packet of all the questions and answers that they provided, so they can get a feel for the candidate when they ask those questions. So I wanted to share it with our recruit summary. So we keep a log just again for ourselves, so we can see how we're doing in the process and see how we can improve and how we could better assist our applicants. So here we can see the positions that were applied for. This is specific to recruit right now. So again, you can see who has been hired or disqualified or withdrew from the process. You can see the different ethnicities. And so again, it allows us to have a better gauge of what that looks like on a spreadsheet. And then this one is just the one where I was mentioned that we don't just do police officer, we do all the hiring for the department. And so again, it gives us an idea of who we're hiring and the different ethnicities and what part maybe they failed and were disqualified on, how we can do a better job. So I know that was a brief snapshot of what we do. Obviously, the process is a lot longer than that, but I wanted to condense as best I can, just give you a general idea of what it looks like, what we have to go through, and then if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you. We do have some questions. Commissioner Cohen?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Sergeant. I'm just wondering, with today's anti-police feelings all over the country and from our lawmakers, are you getting many applicants? And if so, is it tough to find people that want to go into the job now?
Sure, good question. You know, I would say it's like a roller coaster. It comes in waves. That we we have a ton of applicants, and then we hit a little bit of a lull, and so I'm not sure if that's based on the climate of today. I'm not sure if that's based on unemployment right now, but I would say for at least the last couple of years, I think we're doing okay. If that answers your question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Elman.
Yeah, I'm interested in the time span involved in this, from the start to the finish, and how lengthy is it? And also, I saw there was a question in your program about other agencies they apply to. Are we kind of in a race with other agencies so that if they get an offer before we make our offer, do we lose them?
Sure. So I would say start to finish. By the time that they apply with us, you're probably looking at probably 4 months. I think that's start to finish. You've got the written test, which will probably take a couple weeks before we compile a list. Once you invite them to the physical agility, once they take the interview, once they do the background, the physical and psychological test. And again, that's a rough guess. I think based on location of some of these people that are local, if they're local applicants, obviously that's a benefit to us. I would say also how many other agencies they've applied to. Obviously, we have to check their records too to see where they're at in the process, see what information they've provided to them. So as many agencies, we've run into some applicants where they've applied to 20 different agencies. We've got to contact all those agencies and get that information. So I would say best case scenario, you're looking at 3 to 4 months. And then, we are on a fast pace to try to beat some of these applicants that are applying to other agencies. And I think because we've tried to mitigate some of our time, and we've got that new program that allows a better ease for them to get stuff to us without having to drive in and hand it off, without staying on the phone for a long time and talking to the detective about things. It's easier just for them to hurry up and upload whatever document we're looking for to that program. So we're always looking for ways to better ourselves, but sure, there's times where we're definitely on the clock.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you. Sure. With regards to the third-party background, do you find that you use that often, or is that just when you're out of people to do it yourself?
Sure. So again, for us, it depends on how many people have applied during that testing process will determine what we do. And what we have to remember is, again, you got to remember it's not just recruit. It's jailers, it's dispatchers, it's police cadets, it's police technicians, anything that's in the police department. So again, we have to look at what that looks like. If they're out-of-state people, it's easier for us to use the third party to let them go to wherever they need to go and keep our guys local. And again, we'll prioritize the applicants too. So a lot of times lateral officers who are applying from other agencies to us, we'll try to make them a priority because that's a little bit easier for us to deal with also.
Okay, and with regards to the voice stress testing and the psychs, let's say someone fails
Sure.
one of those. Is there an appeal process?
Sure. So we haven't had somebody appeal the stress analyzer test. We've had them just pretty much, we've explained to them, we felt like this question was we felt was deceptive, and we have some concerns, and either sometimes they'll come forward at that point and say, you're right, I was deceptive and I lied about this, and we'll get them to voluntarily withdraw from the process, which is easier for us. As far as this psychological, since I've been in the position, we've had one person that has one person that has appealed it, and we sent them to an independent psychological test, and a different doctor, and that those results were reversed. But it's still up to our chief when he'll look at both the tests and the applicant, and the administration will come to that determination of what they want to do with that applicant. In that particular situation, we decided to move forward with that applicant. But there is a process that if they want to appeal it, they can.
Do you find, like in that particular situation, does that make it difficult down the line? Let's say something that officer does later and this issue comes up.
Sure.
Is that something that's open to investigation for as far back as the hiring process?
Sure, absolutely.
And so is that weighed then, probably not by you, but I guess, Chief, I should be asking you, is that, how do we get around that? How do we say, okay, so you took one and you didn't pass, then you took another one and you passed. Do we go to a third one and whatever outweighs it is what sways, or do we just say that first one is wrong, and then how do we justify continuing to use that same doctor, let's say, that failed someone and then we went against their recommendation?
Okay, the primary thing to keep in mind is that we have to abide by state standards established by POST, the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. And so these are all certified psychologists, so they're PhDs, and there has to be an appellate process for each part of the testing. So we have people that'll protest other portions of it. So what we have to do is balance the information that we get back from another certified psychologist. So it's a decision that we make very carefully, and based on the evidence and the fit of that individual. But you just can't say that you're going to summarily dismiss somebody based on just one result. So we will get the results from the two and just weigh that very carefully, perhaps talk to our own HR folks as well as the city attorney's office.
And you get a lot of detail back from both of the, tests, right? I mean, you get specifics and you're able to forward that to the other doctor. Here's our problem, and they can delve in more.
Well, what we don't want to do is influence the second psychologist by giving them all the information. We want them to make an independent judgment, because that, when you break it down, that really wouldn't be fair if they knew the results the first time around in a lot of the facts.
Sure, and you alluded to one of my last question. Can you explain, Sergeant, to the public, a lot of people don't know this, but so you do your investigation, you follow Burbank procedures, but you really follow, as the Chief said, the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. And so after you've locked up the file, everything's done, you've hired the person, does the Commission still come out and review the work that you've done?
So absolutely. And we actually, next month, we have an audit. And we have an audit where they were two of POST, which are Peace Officer Standard Training. That is the rules and the guidelines that we have to abide by. They're actually going to come next month and check every single background for the last year and a half since the previous audit, and they will check to make sure that we have dotted all our I's, crossed all our T's, and we have everything that we're supposed to within compliance of POST.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Amy, Commissioner Vest, do you have a question? Or Commissioner Elman, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just the other side of recruiting, laterals. Do you have full access to their personnel file from their existing department?
Yes, sir, we do. And so what we will do is we will schedule an appointment, and our investigators will go to that agency, and we will look through their personnel file. We'll look through their, even all the way as far back as their FTO files. And once that applicant signs a waiver, they're allowing us to look at every piece of information from their previous agency.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. With no further, we'll go to the next presentation. Thank you again, Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
Our next presentation is regarding the alternatives to the mental health evaluation team and the mental health pilot programs in other areas. This is a discussion is recommended by the Police Commission to the City Council on whether or not to expand the mental health evaluation team. I'll let I'll let you introduce yourselves. There's a list of people here. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Police Commission. My name is Kelly Bravo Cuevas. I am the analyst for the Burbank Mental Health Evaluation Team. Tonight, we are going to present a variety of models, alternatives of mental health crisis response models that have been adopted by law enforcement agencies and mental health professionals. You can start the presentation. Here's the overview. I'm going to introduce the crisis intervention team model. So this model consists of solely a police-based response to mental health calls for service. A select group of officers are chosen and are specially trained in mental health related topics. These officers go through intense training and education on how to navigate the mental health system. As well, they also focus on de-escalation and crisis resolution skills. Another highlight of the model is that police officers within the team, they actually partner with local mental health providers, so they can have a strong relationship with their hospitals, not only for mental health providers, but with the subjects that they come across, so they can contact their families in order to provide the appropriate help a client may need to prevent a future crisis. And all of the trainings and partnerships from this model is to improve the communication between law enforcement officers and the mentally ill. So that means we want to decrease the use of force during mental health calls for service and to prevent injuries for both officer and the mentally ill. And we also want to divert them to the proper mental health services instead of the criminal justice system. Here, I provided two examples of police agencies that actually have this model. And to begin with the Memphis Police Department CIT model, this is actually where the model has originated. And it originated because of an incident. In 1987, a call for service was initiated where a young man with an extensive mental health history was mentioning suicidal comments, and he had a knife in his hand and was actively cutting himself. As officers arrived and they ordered him to drop the knife, but the man was highly agitated and actually ran towards the officers with the knife still in his hand, prompting the officers to discharge their weapons, and ultimately he was killed, which this incident was the catalyst of the Memphis Police Department CIT model. And in this Memphis Police Department, the model, they actually joined partnerships with the Memphis chapter of the Alliance for the Mentally Ill, also with local mental health providers, universities, to better the communication in their mental health calls for service. The CIT officers are available 24/7, and they go through a 40-hour intense training. And approximately, this department has 268 officers that are specially trained and under the instructional supervision of mental health professionals. As well, the Phoenix Police Department, they also have first responder, police-based crisis intervention. In their department, they have 2 full-time CIT squads, and 535 of those police officers are CIT trained, and 300 of those are actively on patrol. And I'm going to hand it off to Audra Casabella, our licensed clinical supervisor.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Audra Casabella. I am a licensed clinical social worker and a mental health supervisor with the Department of Mental Health, and I supervise several law enforcement teams in LA County. That includes Montebello, Metro Transit, Glendale, Pasadena, and Burbank. So I'm going to talk to you guys about our community-based response model, and what this is a crisis response team that responds to calls for service in the community, and they consist of licensed clinical social workers, nurses, licensed psych techs, physicians. They respond to non-criminal, non-violent calls for service in the community. And what their job is to do an evaluation for Welfare Institution Code 5150. They're to determine whether or not an individual meets criteria for inpatient hospitalization, and if they don't, then what their job is to link them to resources to reduce that crisis, if not eliminate it. Some of the programs that we have, which is where I actually started with the department, it's with the Psychiatric Mobile Response Team. That's 2 clinicians that are dispatched into the community, and they're dispatched via our Access hotline. And anyone in the community within LA County can request for a team to come out and conduct these evaluations. Another pilot program that we have is our therapeutic transportation program, and that's in combination with the Department of Mental Health and the fire department, and they will ride around in specially fitted vans where they will transport individuals that are placed on hold. In the event that they are not placed on a hold, they'll also provide them with services, transport them to medical appointments, or assist them with community resources such as getting their license, Social Security, things of that nature. And then now we also have D.D. Hirsch's Suicide Prevention Center, which is the new pilot program with LA City. And what they do is LAPD Dispatch will transfer calls to their hotline, where mental health professionals will respond, and they'll determine whether or not a response is needed by behavioral specialists, or if they can de-escalate situations via the phone. Another model that we were reviewing was the Cahoots model, and that's in Oregon. What that is they have a medic as well as a social worker that are dispatched into the community. They're dispatched by, I believe they're fire and police dispatch, and they respond to calls for homelessness, substance abuse, dispute resolution, mental illness, and what their job is to do is to reduce the crisis by providing them resources as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Officer Kyles.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Officer Kyles with the Burbank Met Team, and I'll be talking about the co-response model, which basically pairs law enforcement and behavior health specialists to respond to behavior-related calls. The program's goal is to avoid unnecessary incarcerations of severely mental ill citizens and provide alternative care in the least restrictive environment through a coordinated system-wide approach, and also reduce incidents with use of forces and 5585 hospitalizations. A lot of the services that the co-response model focuses on is crisis de-escalation, behavior health screening and assessments, referral, linkage, and resource to community-based services, and also outreach and linkage to families with, when appropriate. So a couple of the models that we focused on within LA County is the LA County Sheriff's Department Mental Health Evaluation Team. And per their website, they provide crisis assessment, interventions, target case management services, and diffuse potentially violent situations, prepare appropriate documentation to assist in the placement of persons with mental illness in acute inpatient psychiatric facilities, and link individuals to outpatient and mental health services or appropriate community resources. We focus also on LAPD with their mental evaluation unit, and their unit has trained dispatchers, 24-hour triage line, co-response teams, follow-up case management, and focuses on community engagement. Within the mental evaluation unit, they have their SMART team, which is the system-wide mental assessment response teams. It's a co-response model that focuses primarily in jail or if someone is in custody. As of today, they have expanded that program where they now not only respond to in custody and jails, but now they respond to in the field. So now we'll focus on programs within the city and our partnering cities. So we have the Burbank Mental Health Team. We provide crisis support during calls for service. Sorry. So we provide crisis support during calls for service, provide ongoing case management support to other divisions regarding persons who could benefit from intensive care management and linkage. We do homeless outreach to link homeless to appropriate resources for housing and services, and we conduct trainings to City of Burbank departments and other community group forums regarding mental health topics. With our neighboring city, we have Glendale PD. They have a mental health evaluation team, and they primarily dispatch. They're primarily dispatched to calls of crisis, and they are determined to be related to an individual with mental illnesses. They work alongside with mental health professionals and work to connect individuals to appropriate community resources in order to reduce their frequency of contact with police. And then we also have the Pasadena PD's HOPE team, which is the Homeless Outreach Psychiatric Evaluation Team. And they provide effective, collaborative, and compassionate mental health and law enforcement emergency responses to those in need of mental health, housing, and related social services. So then we also focused on a larger response model, and that's from the Houston Police Department Mental Health Division. So per their website, they are the only municipal police department in the nation with a mental health division. They have 39 classified personnel and 39 behavioral health professionals. Within their department, they have several programs that focus on chronic consumer stabilization, threat mitigation and investigations unit, homeless outreach team, and crisis call division program. And then they also have their own crisis intervention response teams. I think it's important to focus that for crisis response units, they also focus on taking some of the weight off of patrol. So particularly for Burbank, when we have crisis support calls, we dispatch will call into us, especially if it's someone that dispatch is familiar with, because when we have roll calls, dispatch sits in with us and they're familiar with who calls on a consistent basis. They will call us personally to see if we can handle the calls for service, whether or not it's just an advisement, whether somebody just needs resources or something. They will contact us so we can personally call the client, or we can go out and speak with them. So they try to take that weight off of patrol. Also, as far as like homeless outreach, again, we focus on like high utilizers. We will go out and see like who needs mental health resources, or whether or not it's homeless resources or shelter. MET also works within all the departments within LA County, and we have bi-monthly meetings, and where we sit and talk about what works for one department, what's not working, and we all try to come together and basically see how we can help everybody. And we understand as of right now that a lot of people aren't necessarily, they don't want the police to deal with people with mental health. And so we all suggest to them that there are other options. Like my partner said, we have the Access Hotline, the PMRT. And at the end of the day, we tell them that there are other options available, but we're still here to help them. And I think that's the important part of the co-response models. Any questions?
Let me see here. Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, Officer, thank you. Would it be fair to say that when you go into one of these situations, you don't know if it's going to be peaceful or if it's going to turn violent?
Yes, sir. But our dispatch does a really good job of asking as many questions. They will always ask, does the subject has any prior mental health history, whether or not they're being combative, and kind of just gauge what's going on. So that way they will give not only the officers responding a better chance of understanding the situation, but let the dispatchers know what else we might need.
Don't you also provide a safety net for the healthcare worker that goes in case something turns violent?
Yes, that's why we always respond with them. The social worker will never respond by herself.
Okay. So that works well?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Commissioner Elman.
Let me ask you this. The uniform you're wearing, does it work for you or does it work against you in mental health situations?
I think for the most part it works for us. A lot of people don't know that I'm an officer, but when we deal with subjects on a regular basis, they will bring up the uniform. But when it comes to the regular patrol uniform, we found that this works better.
Thank you. Also, do you find that a lot of people that you're dealing with, you have dealt with them previously?
Yes, so a lot of our calls are referrals usually, and it is either because they have called in to dispatch or officers have dealt with them on a regular basis. So by the time we actually deal with them, we're pretty familiar about what's going on. And even after dealing with them, we continue to deal with them on a regular basis, whether it's just checking up on them, seeing how some of the resources that we provided are working, and what we need to change.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Vest.
Hi, thanks for the information. Just quick question. Since you've been doing this for a little bit, just a rough estimate, how many of the calls that you deal with would you say would end up basically the ratio of calls to uses of force? Because sometimes that can tend to go hand in hand with mental illness and people being under the influence. What would you say are the ratio of that?
Since the program has been in place, there's only been one use of force, and it was what we call de minimis, where no one was injured, but we did have to go hands-on to put them in handcuffs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for that presentation, but also on behalf of the community, for reaching out to people that need help. And the way it seems is that they really can't get anywhere else. And the police department has stepped up to do that. The reason we have this on here is because the city council wanted us to look into possibly expanding this type of program to other departments within the city. And I realize I'm asking you for an opinion here. Do you think it would be helpful, for example, to have the same type of collaboration that you have with a social worker, let's say paired up with a paramedic or a firefighter in those types of situations that aren't necessarily a call in for service that's police related?
Yes, I think it's always useful because there are things that we can't deal with, like medically, that they would be able to handle, and I think it would help relieve stress from patrol and and from the Met team, because there are a lot of calls that are mental health related and health related. So, I mean, the more people we have out there, I don't think it would hurt.
Okay, and then for the benefit of the public, I know you mentioned 5150 and 5585 from the Welfare Institution Codes. Could you just kind of give us a quick summary of what those two codes are?
Okay, so they're both basically the same, where subject is deemed to be either a danger to self, a danger to others, or gravely disabled. But the 5585 is for juveniles and the 5150 is for adults.
So just to clarify, they're not criminal
No, it's
codes.
yes.
Okay. And then the access hotline that you mentioned, you said that people might be able to call them rather than call you. At what stage does that happen, where that is introduced? Is that at dispatch, or is that after you get to the scene?
So usually that's after we get to the scene, or if someone calls us directly, we try to tell them what their options are. But it's normally through us, whether we're on the scene or we're just contacting them.
Okay, so if let's say I'm a person in the neighborhood and I see something, I don't want to say suspicious, but I can tell that this person might have a mental issue, and I call 911. It gets to dispatch. If there's no harm, if he's not exhibiting anything violent or that, could dispatch put him through to that access hotline without having it go through the police? I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, is that an option that someone could take, just not to call the police for every single thing?
Yeah, it could be an option. Like you said, the only thing that we relay is that with PMRT, it can take hours. So sometimes they don't arrive till 6 hours later. And sometimes they arrive, in a short amount of time. So it just depends on whether this is a call that, needs handling at this moment, or whether or not it's something that, you want them to be talked to, but it doesn't have to, it's not an emergency.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. That's why I asked that question, because I think the public sometimes just, there's this big push now to, not involve police officers in every single, domestic issue or a mental illness issue. But as a city, what alternatives do we have for the fastest response to get the people the help they need? In the city of Burbank, is your team the only team that does that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so right now we have no other option but to do that.
Yes.
And if we, let's say, expanded this to a fire department, we'd probably have the same problem with it as you. I mean, or is it health related when we're sending someone from let's say, paramedics? Let's say it's a mental issue that might be totally not health related. You've got, people that are in the system. We know their problem. Is there another team besides the fire department, let's say, or the police department that could go quickly?
As of now, no.
So the city doesn't have a mental health department?
No.
To go out and roll a van like they do in LA. And if you need to refer this question to somebody else, that's totally okay too. Do these cities that have a van, are they handling it different? Does it go through dispatch?
So I actually just came today from the Pasadena Port team. I shadowed with them today, and they're the Pasadena Outreach Response Team, and it's through the fire department. They have individuals from the Pasadena Public Health, and they ride with the fire department, and we actually got dispatched on about 3 calls from PD Dispatch for homeless encampments. So they have that team available, but it is a pilot program. They're on a grant. It isn't a program that is with the city 100% of the time currently. I believe they have about a year left, but they're planning on seeing how they can fund the program further because of their success. LA County PMRT, it's countywide. And at any given moment, you can have anywhere from 6 to 7 teams per service area. And the LA County is broken into 8 service areas. But they're responding all the way from the Antelope Valley to Pomona to Long Beach. And so the wait time can be 30 minutes. It can be the following day. So first responder type of response, you're not going to find that. And the calls that come through PMRT are nonviolent, non-criminal. So yes, they're in mental health crisis, but there's nothing that we can do to stop in the event that someone is hurting themselves currently in that moment, if that makes any sense.
It makes complete sense.
Okay.
To follow up on that, and I think Commissioner, a little bit to follow up on Commissioner Vest's question, in your experience with these other cities and with the city of Burbank, do you find that that there's a difference when the program that responds is mainly, let's say, the police department responding or the fire department responding? What type of difference do you see, if any, with the person you're trying to help?
When I'm there, I feel like the response is pretty similar because what they're both doing is they're allowing me the initiative to go out and be the point of contact. They both take a step back and allow me to conduct my evaluations, conduct my interviews without much intervention unless necessary. I mean, of course, they're going to add their piece, but they generally let me take the lead on most of these calls. So for me, I feel like the response is very similar for both, because they provide both of them provide me with the same expectation related to my clinical expertise.
Okay, and can you kind of give me just touch it on a little bit what you think you see? Do you visually see the person you're helping change, whether it's a police person in a uniform or a fire person in a uniform? Can you sense from them that they are anxious to deal with you because there's a police officer there versus a fighter, or is it the same because it's a uniform? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. I've been doing this for several years, and it really is just dependent on the person. Like, I've gotten similar responses when fire shows up. I've gotten similar responses when PD shows up. There are times where individuals will get more anxious and say, well, if the police are here, I don't want to deal with it. And then they'll kind of, then, like my partner said, that we'll talk about other programs that are available that can respond as well. Or sometimes they'll ask me to respond on my own, which is something that obviously with this program that we don't do, but then we'll do the referrals for PMRT. But there are, depending on the individual, depending on their experiences, the response is going to be different.
Okay, and then you are from the county.
I am. I'm from the Department of Mental Health, our Emergency Outreach and Triage Division.
Okay, so from the county's perspective, let's say the city of Burbank wanted to look into expanding the program to other departments.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as a benefit?
100%.
And does the county have the ability to partner with the other? I mean, do you have enough staff and people to be able to do that?
They would find it. Oh, but
They
that's above my pay grade.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions? I see some more questions. Commissioner Cohen and then Commissioner Elman.
You mentioned your partner. She just spoke before you did. Do you feel safer when she's out there with you?
I do, absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
I just want to mention that I do still continue to do PMRT on the weekends, and when we do go out and respond to calls, there are times where we do still have to call law enforcement, and that's me with another clinician. My partner is usually a psychologist, so it's a psychologist and myself, and we respond to calls in the community. And there are times where me and her is just not enough support, and our safety is at risk, and when it is, then we call PD for support in whatever city we're at.
Commissioner Elman.
I'd like to ask the chief a question. I remember many years ago, before we had the team, if a 5150 was initiated, the person would be transported to Olive View, and you would lose the officer for about 4 or 5 hours. Has that changed?
It has gotten better, but when we have to go to a county facility like Olive View, it does take time for transportation. In some cases, the county can provide transportation, but if not, our patrol resources will be used for that purpose.
Thank you.
Absolutely, please.
And so that's also a part of the Met team's job, is that we call hospitals and we try to find the available bed so that the patrol officers don't have to spend hours within Olive View, that maybe they'll just take a 30, 45-minute drive and have someone checked into the hospital than, spending all the time in Olive View. So that's also what we do.
Okay, one follow-up question to that. For both of you, is there coordination on a regular basis? I mean, I know you have these meetings, and I know you're in the county and with the city, and you also meet with a group of other Met team people throughout the county. Are the hospitals involved in some of these meetings too, to better coordinate some of the bed situations, or because I know sometimes they call up, from a past experience, we just have to call up every hospital to see who has a bed. Is there like a one place kind of that you can go to yet, or not, to get that answer? Is there one phone number you can call to find an available bed?
I wish there was. That would make life a lot easier. But what we try to do is, based on the presenting problem, based on different factors, then we know specifically which hospitals that we need to call. So we're able to narrow that down based on what's in front of us, dependent on their insurance, dependent on what the presenting problem is, dependent on whether or not they're aggressive or agitated. So we're able to narrow it down to a few hospitals, but there isn't one number that we can call. Certain hospitals have done new things, like every morning I'll get an email from Aurora Charter Oak, and they'll send me an email regarding bed availability for the day. Other hospitals we've met with, we do a collaboration with, I've had meetings with Glendale Memorial Hospital. It's all about networking and building relationships with these hospitals, and they're more inclined to take the clients that we have. We've done it with Glendale Memorial. We've done it with Huntington Hospital in Pasadena. We just try to develop as many relationships as we can to kind of make it easier for us to be able to find beds for our clients, if that makes any sense.
Sure. No, and this is my final question, only because you brought it up. And I know someone's going to say, well, how about Burbank? Do we do anything with the Burbank Hospital?
So yeah, we actually work really closely with St. Joseph's. The only problem is they're not LPS designated. Now, if someone would grant them LPS designated capability, I'm sure we'd work with them a lot more, but they're actually a great partner of ours for especially the ones that are medically compromised. They have their own LPS designated staff that are able to write holds in the ER. However, they're also willing to work with us, but we try not to inundate them, especially because their main focus is medical. It's not psychiatric.
What's LPS?
Latterman Petrus Short. So that gives any officer the ability to write the Welfare Institution Code 5150-5585, several social workers and other disciplines within the Los Angeles County. Some hospitals have them. It's anyone who's designated to be able to write the application for detention.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? I don't see any. Thank you both, all of you, for the service that you do. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Chief?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. One is the mental health system is not what it should be. It's still developing. And toward that end, what I'd like to do is just point out a couple of factors. One is the reason we're involved in the business is because in 2010, 2011, we started noticing an increase in calls, and we didn't have robust support from the County Department of Mental Health. So we actually went to then Supervisor Antonivich's office and made an appeal to him to have a clinician assigned to the Burbank Police Department. And that was the start of our COLE model. But I will also say that the city is paying for half that salary of the clinician. So that's why we got into the business, and that's why we're continuing at this time. I would also like to add that there is really a dearth of trained psychologists and clinicians out there, the social workers. And if we were to, irrespective of model, we're going to have to train more psychologists and more clinicians to really meet the community's need, not just in our city, but throughout our county. The other problem that we have is the shortage of beds. There are very few facilities where we can take people, and it may be a 48-hour hold, but somebody may have to be released after a relatively short period of time because, again, there are a dearth of beds that are available. And I know that concerns people in the neighborhoods where people are from because they get released and generally they come back to their neighborhoods. So it's frustrating, but I will give every person that just spoke a whole lot of credit for building a system. It's going to take a while. So even if we make a decision today to adopt a different model, it's not going to happen tomorrow. And it's going to take the cooperation not just of the police department, but there are a myriad of other agencies throughout the county. The funding's always going to be an issue. But we all understand this is a big need. And that's why back in 2012, we went to Supervisor Antonovich. We've continued to build since then, and we will continue to do our best to serve our community. The last item is that irrespective of where we go in the future in terms of the model, our officers will always have to be trained. In mental illness, we need to be able to identify autistic individuals, and there's just a tremendous amount of training that has to be given out there. So all of our people have gone through 16 hours of training. There's recurrent training. But again, no matter what model we adopt, our officers have to have the training because they are the ones that are running into people on the street. It's not just a radio call. It's just not somebody calling in to report somebody that's really acting in a bizarre fashion. But our officers on the streets, it may be somebody that is running against a red light that's nude. And again, there are a lot. Training is the requisite to making a proper identification of what type of individual you're dealing with, what type of tactics you'll have to utilize. The command and control technique does not generally work at all when you're dealing with somebody with mental illness. It just exacerbates the situation. So I think a lot of people think that the police can just be pulled out of the equation, but again, this is just one other type of training that we have to provide our people, and it needs to be repeated at regular intervals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So for the rest of the commissioners, this is a follow-up to the city council meeting, and the city council requesting us to look into these. So now is the time that we can discuss options or just have a discussion or debate about expansion of this program. Anybody want to begin? Have any ideas? I'll make a statement. Personally, I want to commend the police department for taking this on. Too often, many things are dropped into the lap of the police to do that don't necessarily fit under the traditional scope of police. Now, this does, in many aspects, fit when it relates to a call, that has, potential violence, some safety issues. Can we expand a program to where other departments have the ability to have that same training and the same mental health response? I think we can. I think it's a good thing for the city to look into. That doesn't mean taking away from the police department. I think, mental health is a big concern, and I think the more departments that we have that have, first responders that have interactions with people, the more that we can get some of them on board with the right training, I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's terrible. And so that my position on it is expansion, not removing or relocating or doing any of those. Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, I think it should be expanded, but it should be expanded by the police department being able to hire some more people so that they can service this. You don't want to send somebody that's a gardener along with the young lady to go into a situation that could turn violent. You need somebody that knows how to handle those situations. And they hope they never get into that situation, but they do happen. So I say expand the police department and have 2 or 3 teams. Let us hire more people to deal with the issue, not go to some department that doesn't have these interactions.
Yeah, just to clarify, my position is on first responders. So that would be fire and police. I definitely wouldn't recommend gardeners going out or anybody else. It'd have to be first responders. Or maybe some of the IT guys here could do it. Just kidding. Commissioner Elman.
There's some excellent landscapers out there. I would think it really comes down to is the magic number seems to be for the Burbank Police Department is 161. If we did want to expand the mental health unit, I would like to see it go higher than 161 rather than taking from one part of the department to move over to another part of the department. I think in the long run, we really need to have a better understanding of staffing needs. What is the right number and how many jobs, tasks, do we really want to really expand, and what if there's anything? I guess we just don't have all the numbers. So I really can't make a decision, but expansion sounds great, but I think we should expand the right way and not take it from any other group. That's it.
Any other comments? I don't think we're going to come up with a recommendation today to send to the city council, but let me ask Ms. O, do we have a deadline on this, or can this be studied further?
You should take whatever time you need in order to make a good recommendation, one that you can support to council. I don't recall any deadline. I think council would prefer just to have a good reasoned recommendation from the police commission.
Oh, okay, thank you. So for the rest of the commissioners then, I would suggest that we have maybe form a subcommittee, 2 commissioners, look in it further and report back to the commission just as a follow-up. Maybe we can ask some other questions of the county, get some ideas of some of the other, how they're expanding in other places, if it comes down to just, hiring more people or creating different divisions. Anybody interested in that? Commissioner Elman? I would be willing to participate in that too. So I guess we can, do we need to vote on that, Ms. O, or can we just do it by consensus that we just have a subcommittee of 2 members and report back to the commission?
I think you can do it by consensus since you have a volunteer, Mr. Elman, and yourself, and you can't have more than 2 at any rate in the subcommittee.
Is there any opposition to this?
Well, it's not opposition, but what else are you going to find out? We need more police officers and we can handle it. That's what we need to recommend. What else? What are we going to tell them? We should not do that? I mean, well, what kind of recommendation can we give the city council if not expand by giving us more officers?
Commissioner Elman?
Well, one of the things that I want to find out is how many calls are normal during a shift? How many mental health people, how many hours do we have them per day? How many, I really need to know the numbers because I don't know how many calls on mental health issues the department receives, how often they come in. Eddie, do we have more calls at midnight than we do at noontime? Are our mental health team available when needed? Are there certain hours which have greater needs? So I need to find out that information. So it's really hard to justify expansion. Yes, expand, but when and how, it has to be answered. And that should be our recommendations to the council.
Okay, so I've noted both of those, and Commissioner Cohen, I know you're not in opposition, so with that, I think we'll just go forward. We'll do the subcommittee. We'll report back next month. I know I'm going to call the county and find out how some of these other programs are expanding, and if maybe it's just money issue. Maybe they're expanding through the city taking it on and bringing other help from outside, with grants. So that's what I'd like to report back, something to the city council with some, more detail than just, go ahead and expand it. Because that's what we did in our last recommendation. We said, expand it. And then they asked us to look further into it. So I want to look a little bit further into it, and we'll report back.
If I can make a recommendation, what we can do, you're talking about gathering metrics. What we can do is provide, for instance, the number of mental health related calls we receive and approximately when they're received on what days of the week. The one encumbering aspect to all this right now is that we have one team, which means they work 40 hours a week. And that means the way we're deployed, they will work 4 days, 10 hours a day. So that leaves a considerable number of hours in a week without folks here. So that's the reason for expansion, so that you could have either 24-hour coverage or close to 24-hour coverage, 7 days a week. But we can gather the statistics for you and present a report next month.
Okay, and then, I wanted to try to do a lot of this ourselves so we don't inundate you with this, but how difficult would it be to get a dollar figure on it, too, that we could throw in there?
That's why we have Courtney Paget here. She'll take a look at the numbers in terms of the cost of a clinician, a police officer, in other related costs such as vehicles, radios, those types of things.
So we're not really talking expansion necessarily. We're talking fully funding something that is available all the time. We're not going over what we have. We want to make sure that those services are available every day, because right now they're not.
That's
more
correct.
more hours of coverage.
Okay, so we'll do that. Any other suggestions or topics, debate on this issue? Seeing none, then we will move on to the next item. Presentation of body-worn camera footage from the officer-involved shooting that occurred on March 8th, 2021.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Before we get to it, can we kind of discuss the process that brought this video to this meeting? I mean, this is an ongoing investigation, and I would just like to know how it came here and the reasoning for it.
Commissioner Elman, let me ask Ms. O, are we able to have any discussion before it's?
I would limit the discussion, but just Mr. Elman's asking a procedural question, so I will go ahead and answer. Typically, in the past, you would not have seen this video this early because there are ongoing administrative as well as criminal investigations. However, in 2019, a new law was passed It's actually on your agenda. It's AB 748. And it modified government code section dealing with officer-involved shootings that says that we have to release videos within 45 days unless there's a reason why you can't. And there's enumerated reasons why you may be able to withhold a video for a certain period of time. In this particular situation, the police department did not have the facts for our officer-involved shooting did not meet any of those conditions, and therefore we have to release it within 45 days. We're coming up on that 45-day mark. In fact, I believe it's Friday. And because we have this police commission meeting tonight, we're releasing it simultaneously with the presentation to the commission and also for the public in general. We have also had some public records requests for this particular video, but the short answer to your question, Mr. Elman, is that we are required to by law.
Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, one follow-up really quickly. This, Ms. O, this is an informational item, correct? This is not something that would be debated or have a recommendation.
Correct.
Okay.
Questions should be limited, again, to any kind of clarifying questions you may have about the video, but it should be very limited because, as I said, this is an ongoing investigation, both administratively and criminally.
Okay, and if we get into that, would you please stop us? Thank you. The chief has a comment. Go ahead, Chief.
Let me just say that this is the first occurrence that's going to require a release of information. Since this law was passed, it took effect on January 1st of 2019. So we can't just release raw footage. What we have been able to do is take footage from body-worn cameras, traffic cameras, and private business cameras and put that together so that it's going to be narrated. But we followed a protocol. We developed this video. It was shown first to the city attorney, city manager, individually to our council members. And as Ms. O said, tonight you're going to see it. And consistent with your viewing, it's going to be released to the public. It will be on our website, which is burbankpd.org. But with that being said, it took a tremendous commitment to put this together. It required a lot of expertise. But I want to thank Lieutenant Derek Green, who was our previous PIO, Sergeant Emil Brimway, and then our administrative analyst, Michelle Rodriguez, who is in charge of all of the Axon body-worn camera product, was involved, as well as Detective John Voorhees. And then it was a collaborative effort because we needed a lot of assistance that was capably rendered to us by the city's PIO's office. So with that, I will also add that there will be, this is an active investigation. It probably won't be concluded for the best part of a year because that's how long these investigations take. So there are no conclusions that have been drawn from it, and we can't make any comments about tactics or anything else. So with that, what we can do is have Sergeant Emil Brimway start the video if you'd like.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, Emil.
Starting, Chief.
Hello, I'm Lieutenant Derek Green with the Burbank Police Department. This critical incident debrief video is intended to provide information and an overview of the circumstances related to an officer-involved shooting that occurred in the city of Burbank on March 8, 2021 at about 5:20 a.m. This video contains both audio and video footage from the incident, as well as information about evidence related to the case, in order to provide a better understanding of what occurred based on the information available to investigators thus far. The Burbank Police Department conducts very thorough use of force investigations, including all officer-involved shootings. These investigations typically require multiple interviews, a review of all known audio and video recordings, and an analysis of physical and forensic evidence. These investigations can take several months to complete, and this investigation is still in its very early stages. The Burbank Police Department does not draw any conclusions as to whether the involved police officers' actions were consistent with department policies, their training, and the law until all of the facts are known and the investigation is complete. A word of caution. This video contains graphic images, video, and content which may be disturbing for sensitive viewers. Whenever a law enforcement officer uses deadly force to protect life or defend against an attack, it can be difficult to watch. Viewer discretion is advised. This incident began on March 8, 2021 at about 4:44 a.m. The Burbank Police Department Communications Center received a call about a small child seen wandering around the Quality Inn hotel parking lot, which is located at 2255 North Buena Vista Street in the city of Burbank. The caller reported that the child was wearing shorts and was barefoot. The caller believed the person or persons responsible for the child was under the influence, but was not able to provide information as to their whereabouts. The following audio is a recording of the call received by Burbank Police Communications.
Good morning, Burbank Police.
Hi, my name is Jen. I'm calling from the Quality Inn in Burbank.
What can I do for you?
I'm wondering if you guys wanted to send a patrol to do a welfare check. There's a little kid in the parking lot, and he's been out here for about half an hour. And Mom and Dad seem to be on high or something. He's out there in the cold hugging his pillow. He won't talk to me. He's barefoot in shorts.
Is he in a vehicle, on foot?
He's next to their vehicle. Like, they went up to the guest room and they just left him there. I don't know what room number they're staying in.
What kind of car is in there?
It's in a gray sedan. It looks like Audi or something.
You don't know what room they went into?
I don't.
Okay, and you're the employee there, right?
Yeah.
Does the boy speak English? And how old does the boy appear to be?
The boy appears to be around 7 or 8. I think he does speak English, but when I talk to him, he just looks down at his pillow. He won't even look at me.
How old is he?
Like I said, maybe 8 or 9.
Okay. All right, keep an eye on him, please, and I'm going to have officers on the way, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
At about 4:47 a.m., Burbank police officers were dispatched to the Quality Inn to check on the welfare of the child.
1013 is declared respond. Check welfare on a juvenile. The Quality Inn, 2255 North Buena Vista. For the employee, small child is wandering unattended. Police parents are possibly UI.
1013 station.
Unit says 1013.
26.
Cali 26. Child is male, approximately 8 years old.
922 response 26.
The first two officers arrived at about 4:59 a.m. and were working together in a two-person patrol unit. They located the child, a 7-year-old boy, in the parking lot and attempted to gather information regarding the whereabouts of his parents. The child said he was waiting for his father, who was later determined to be his stepfather. It was soon learned that the child and his stepfather were involved in a traffic collision on the Interstate 5 freeway and had left the scene, walking from the freeway to the Quality Inn parking lot. It was also learned the vehicle involved in the crash was suspected of being stolen out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Based on the information known at the time, officers believe the child's stepfather was possibly an auto theft suspect.
Hey, PhD route with a vehicle matching the description from the 8-year-old. It's a G-Ride out of Las Vegas, and it was involved in a PC, so it's a fancy vehicle, so I think it's going to be related to that kid.
The following video surveillance footage from a traffic camera captured the boy with the suspect walking south on Buena Vista Street away from the freeway towards the Quality Inn parking lot. A video surveillance camera from Jack in the Box, located on the southwest corner of Buena Vista Street and San Fernando Boulevard, also captured the boy and suspect. Here is additional video surveillance footage from the Quality Inn showing the child with the suspect entering the parking lot. Video surveillance from the Quality Inn also captured the suspect attempting to enter a parked pickup truck using a shaved-down key in what is believed to have been an attempt to steal the truck. One of the officers on scene spoke with the hotel's front desk clerk and learned the truck did not belong to the suspect.
Okay, can we see? Leave it. And the rest was flashing your camera at cars. Whose truck is that? No, not his. I guess I'm just seeing this right now. And then he was flashing his flashlight at cars.
The suspect then left the child behind in the parking lot, unsupervised, as he walked south on Buena Vista Street from the Quality Inn. The suspect was captured on traffic cameras attempting to enter another parked vehicle near the intersection of Buena Vista Street and Thornton Avenue. After he was unsuccessful, the suspect walked west to the 2100 and 2200 blocks of North Frederick Street, where he attempted to enter additional parked vehicles. The suspect ultimately entered and stole a maroon Honda Accord that was parked in the 2200 block of North Frederick Street. He drove this vehicle south on North Frederick Street, east on Thornton Avenue, and north on Buena Vista Street, returning to the Quality Inn. It was there that the suspect encountered police officers speaking with the child. Burbank police officers assigned to patrol are equipped with body-worn cameras. They are typically worn at chest level and provide a general perspective in the line of sight from the angle worn. The camera does not provide a view of everything a police officer sees and experiences during a contact or investigation. Body-worn cameras are capable of recording both audio and video. However, once activated, cameras have a 30-second pre-event buffering, which records the previous 30 seconds of video prior to activation without audio. This feature is designed to capture incidents that occur suddenly or without warning when a police officer doesn't immediately activate the camera. You are about to watch body-worn camera video from this incident, beginning with the police officer's arrival and interaction with the young child.
What are you doing here? Where's your dad?
My dad just left nowhere. I'm assuming he's going to go get a car. That's all.
Where's your dad at?
We just went around my corner and then he just went on the corner. That's it.
As the suspect returned to the Quality Inn Hotel driving a stolen car, he encountered police officers with his child. Upon seeing his stepfather, the child began to walk towards the car as the suspect called out to him. Out of concern for the child's safety, one of the police officers attempts to prevent the child from getting into the car with the suspect. At that point, the suspect displayed a loaded 9mm handgun, showing it in his right hand, and pointed the gun at the officers. One of the officers pointed his duty weapon at the suspect and fired 3 times. The following body-worn camera video captures the moment the suspect points the gun at the officers and the officer fires his weapon. Please note, the beginning portion of this video has no audio.
Where's your hands?
Hey, get the
Move!
back. Get
Move!
the back.
He's in here. He pulled a gun on me. Where is he? He's in the driver's seat. Get the kid out of here. Get the kid out of here.
Get covered. Get covered.
Let me see your hands.
Hands up! Let me see your hands. Hands up! Put your hands out the window right now. Put your hands out the window.
Now, here is a slowed down version of the same video showing the gun in the suspect's right hand pointed at officers. Here is additional video of the officer-involved shooting from the second officer's body-worn camera. This officer did not fire her weapon.
Hey, partner. Hey. Hold on.
Hey! Hey! Get my dad! Get my dad! Get my Drop the gun!
Code 3 back. Shots fired. Shots fired.
The officer-involved shooting was also captured by hotel video surveillance, as seen in the following video. From this angle, video surveillance captures the suspect entering the hotel parking lot in the stolen Honda. The suspect then parks the vehicle. Video surveillance captures the suspect exiting the vehicle momentarily and looking around for the child. As the suspect returns to the vehicle, officers begin to approach. The child is also seen approaching the vehicle, being followed by a second officer. It is at this point the officer-involved shooting occurs. Here is a slowed down and zoomed in version of the same video, which shows the suspect seated in the driver's seat, holding a gun in his right hand and pointing it at officers. Immediately following the officer-involved shooting, additional patrol units responded to the hotel, as well as paramedics from the Burbank Fire Department. The suspect was struck by gunfire and transported to a local trauma center, where he succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced deceased. The child was unharmed and taken into protective custody. The gun in the suspect's possession was determined to be a loaded 9mm Springfield Hellcat semi-automatic pistol. The gun was reported stolen out of Las Vegas after it was taken in a vehicle burglary that occurred between February 23rd and February 24th of 2021. The suspect in this incident was later identified as David William Kaler, a 30-year-old resident of Las Vegas, Nevada. Mr. Kaler had an extensive criminal history, including several felony convictions and prior arrests for gun, assault, theft, and drug violations. Over the next several months, the Burbank Police Department will continue to conduct an extensive investigation into this incident, which will include a criminal investigation that will be presented to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office Justice System Integrity Division. The LA County District Attorney's Office will also conduct their own independent investigation into this officer-involved shooting. Also, an administrative investigation of all evidence and facts by the Burbank Police Department Internal Affairs Bureau. In addition, a comprehensive analysis by the Burbank Police Department Critical Incident Review Board, as well as an independent analysis and review by an external oversight committee, the Office of Independent Review. The purpose for these review processes is to ensure the officer's tactics and actions conform to department policy and the law in regards to drawing and exhibiting a weapon and the application of deadly force. For more information on the Burbank Police Department's processes for ensuring professional accountability, as well as the department's use of force policy, please visit burbankpd.org. Thank you for taking the time to watch this critical incident debrief video.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to add just a couple of things. One is that when we've shown this to individuals previously on the city council, there were questions about the officers. So neither of them were injured. But let me just say this, that if you remember our presentation on President Obama's 21st Century Task Force report on policing, the number 6 pillar was officer safety and wellness. And that is a big factor that I'm mentioning tonight, because what we immediately do is take those involved officers out of the field and send them to a psychologist so they can return to work. But this is difficult for everybody, but really the officers that were involved, it's just a heavy burden on them. So they do receive that approval to come back to field duty, but also we have follow-up aspects that are can be employed if necessary. For instance, our employee assistance program, peer counseling program, and there are other specialized resources available to us if that's needed. The Office of Independent Review will review this, and we have internally a Critical Incident Review Board, which is comprised of and chaired by the Deputy Chief and all our captains, and they will analyze every aspect of this incident before making a recommendation. So with that, that concludes my remarks, and there may be just a few questions, but it's probably best that we not do that now, only because this is an investigation in progress, and there are no conclusions, and we can't even offer the direction we think it might be going. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Before I open it to questions, I just want to remind the commissioners and the public that this is an informational item only presented to us. Additionally, for clarification, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time that something like this has ever been shown at a police commission meeting. And so I don't want to, confuse anybody. The police commission does not have the authority to review this shooting. It's not the job of the police commission as outlined in their job duties to criticize or investigate or anything that has to do with this investigation. So I think we keep our comments as if we were regular members of the public on this one, and be mindful of the investigation. With that said, any questions or comments? Ms. O has a comment. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. As we said previously, any questions should be just limited to anything that might be necessary to clarify what you've seen. I would also caution that you not make any comments regarding the video. Regarding either the production or the actual substance of the video itself, it would probably be best if there are no questions to then just move on to the next agenda. Thank you.
Okay, I know we have at least one question. Commissioner Vest.
just to clarify, I just want to make sure the child wasn't injured and he was returned back to his mother in Las Vegas. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other questions or comments. Okay, so with that, thank you, Chief, for presenting it. And we will move on to the next item of business, which is, Chief, it's back to you, general announcements by the police chief.
That's correct. So the most important item I want to talk about is there were questions previously about our complaint summaries and posting them. So the 2020 complaint summary has been posted on our website, which again is burbankpd.org. And as a matter of fact, if somebody wants to view the video that we just saw, you can access it via that same website, burbankpd.org, and that it'll direct you to YouTube to view it. But the big point is that that information has been posted. Just a couple of other items briefly. We continue to see an uptick in some crime, and a lot of it is preventable. So it gets back to something I keep repeating. If you see something, say something as a member of the public, and take reasonable precautions in safeguarding, particularly your physical items that are in your car. Keep your cars locked. In terms of response times, we're under 3 minutes for emergency responses, which is extremely good. Our responses to all calls is about 14 and a half minutes, which is an enviable statistic also. We have experienced a decrease in traffic collisions, but I think we're all aware that people are not driving the way they should on the streets. So I will offer this advice once again. When we're driving, you need to drive defensively. If you're walking, you need to walk defensively and stay off your phone, particularly when you're crossing intersections. And the same applies to a bicyclist on the roads as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So now we're at the point of our meeting where we introduce any new agenda items for future meetings. Do we have any commissioners like to introduce any new agenda items for the next meeting? Besides me, I'd like to introduce one. I don't see anybody else, so I'll go ahead. I'd like to see if we could place on the agenda discussion and debate about kind of housekeeping issues, procedures of the police commission. Obviously, I don't want to debate it now, but I've gotten some comments about how we receive commission emails that I'd like to, for us to be able to discuss how that process works, where they go through, as well as our affiliation, the commission's affiliation with the police department. So I know those are kind of broad topics. Ms. O, I don't know if that's too broad or it needs to be, a little more fine-tuned.
Can you fine tune them more?
So specifically, I want to address how we communicate with how the public communicates with the police commission. Maybe technologically, I know that we get emails that come through the police department, then they get forwarded to us. So I want to look into, just to be upfront about everything. If we're an oversight body of sorts, and the direction that we're heading into, there needs to be some, there needs to not be an appearance of collusion when it comes to information that's brought to the police commission. So I'm concerned that they go to the police department and then the police department sends them to us. I'm not concerned that they're not doing it. I'm just concerned of what the public view might be, questioning, hey, well, what if something happens and you don't get it? So I'd like to talk about alternative ways, or, leaving it the way it is, or just to discuss that. That's one item. The other item would be our this was brought to my attention, that I don't see it here, but I've seen it before. Sometimes our agenda appears on a city of the police department's letterhead, and whether or not that's appropriate given that we are not part of the police department. Again, it leads to an appearance that it's, the police department. So just clean up stuff. I don't know if I have to specifically spell out a motion, or can we just put it under one?
Clarify, Mr. Chair, you didn't want to necessarily limit it to just direct communications or letterhead. Is it any other brainstorming regarding other ways to have more independence from the actual police department?
Yes. So that's why I said, is it too broad of a topic, or do I just have to finite it to those two items?
I understand what your intent is, and I can work with Sherry to make sure that the agenda item is appropriately, has enough information to give public notice about what the discussion will be.
Okay, so do we need to have a vote on that then?
I just want to make sure that the other commissioners understand and don't have any questions about what the agenda item will be before you take a vote.
Are there any questions? Okay, so I have a thumbs up and a no questions. So I think we're
No
okay.
questions from me.
And no questions from Commissioner Vest. So I think we're okay. Let's take a quick vote then. Do we do a roll call vote on it? No, okay, let's just, by consensus, anybody that opposes it, let it, speak now. Okay, hearing none or seeing none, the motion is approved. Any other items to introduce at the next meeting? Okay, seeing and hearing none, the next meeting date is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. And until then, this meeting is adjourned.